Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Jim Stroud Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Special guest, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, everyone. This is Maryam Mahdaviani, and I am the founder of Attesto. And I work very closely with talent acquisition teams and in some cases with security teams to make sure we help teams find qualified and authentic candidates so they could build solid teams for their companies.
Qualified and authentic candidates. That's interesting because so many candidates are cheating these days using AI to cheat. I think I saw a video not too long ago where it was a deep fake video where someone appeared to be on camera, but they actually were checking their notes or using AI to answer their questions. How how prolific is cheating in interviews these days?
Jim, I mean, this is a pretty wide spectrum.
Hmm.
So you could use tools to assist you, or, you might consider cheating. Some people might not consider cheating. But then on the other side of the spectrum, we actually have people who are fully impersonating someone else, or they've created a completely fake identity. So when we are talking about like a fraud and fake applications, we're talking about like too many different versions of this. So, I mean, as I said, like we have candidates that do not actually exist, like the people they claim to be either it does not exist because the identity is completely fake, or they're just using someone else's like LinkedIn profile and persona. And
Hmm.
then on the other side, we have like candidates who are making things up. Maybe like they're inflating their resumes, or they are using AI and cheating the interview. So I think it's very important to some extent break it down. And then when it comes to, okay, where is our tolerance level? I guess it depends on what kind of fraud and kind of fake process we're talking about.
Is this mostly a remote interview problem, or are we seeing it bleed into in-person settings too?
It's definitely bigger in remote process, but we are also seeing it in person. Like there are cases, especially for hybrid roles, we see cases that someone starts the interview process, maybe has the video interviews, and then another person shows up for the in-person interview. And then, to make it even more crazy is that like another person shows up for work. So we see that, or we have cases where someone gets the job and someone else does the work. In
Okay.
cases, like someone gets the job, and if it's especially if it's hybrid, like the person who's doing the work might not turn on the video during the team meetings and so forth. And so that's another thing. So the actual fraud and fake personas doesn't end at hiring. It can also continue like post hiring as well, which is making it exciting and also challenging in a way.
To say the least. I used to work for Microsoft, and I know for a fact that in India, people would do
Mhm.
that. They would get hired for a job, and then somebody else would appear in their place. Does that happen in other countries? Does that happen a lot in the United States? I guess is what I want to ask. Does that happen a lot in the U.S. as opposed to other
Yeah,
countries?
so in the US, we are seeing like even post-hiring. I mean, there's a pre-hiring and then the post-hiring. Like post-hiring, we see individuals who, get the job, like get multiple jobs, and then either outsource it in a way. So
Hmm.
some other, like, outsource it to India, like South America, to other countries. I mean, they also could use AI agents, And that's also another
Ah,
interesting topic that,
hmm.
of course, it's good to use AI for productivity, but how you're using it should be communicated with your manager and your company, and it has to be compliant and approved. So that's also another kind of interesting, kind of new topic that I don't know if we get to talk about it today, but also even like when it comes to use of AI for employees, that's also something that it has to be compliant and approved. That's another thing that companies have to be aware of, and there need to be tools to help with that governance.
Sure, sure. I know a lot of it happens in the tech sector, for sure. But are there other industries where people are using uh, AI, deepfake technology, whatever, to
Yeah,
scam for jobs?
absolutely. So we are seeing it in other sectors as well. Like our customers are not limited to tech sectors. Like we are seeing it, in kind of construction business, or like environmental engineering. We see like people who even trying to get job as like business, like for business development jobs, for example.
Hmm.
They completely fabricate their past experiences. Like it could be like the person could be working in a car dealership and like really fabricates like past experiences and tries to get a job for a business development role that requires some relevant past experiences. Or in healthcare, we are seeing a good amount of fraud as actually coming up as well, like in the healthcare sector. Kind of they're fabricating credentials and past experiences as well. So um, the start of it was with the tech sector, and still the volume is higher for tech sectors, for remote roles, but it's not unique to them. And we are seeing the rise in other sectors and other types of roles as well.
Huh. Huh. I'm so used to associated with the tech industry. Just you're telling me something new here. Uh, yeah, interesting. So, when it comes to the different tools that people use, is it that ChatGPT is like the main tool that people use when they're, um, I'll just say, cheating in a job interview? Or is it some other technology, or is it like really sophisticated technology they're using beyond ChatGPT?
So if you think about it as different stages of the hiring funnel. So before the interview, when the application is submitted, and maybe there's like a pre-screening questions. In that case, a lot of times, they might use ChatGPT, Anthropic, or like similar tools to generate, create a resume
Hmm.
that seems to be pretty good based on the job criteria. They can also create a LinkedIn profile or use someone else's LinkedIn profile. So we see even more cases now of these like fraudsters who use someone else's LinkedIn profile, and they use that person's LinkedIn profile. They create a resume that kind of goes with that LinkedIn profile. And they have their own email address, and maybe they're like a different phone number. So they also like generate like a voice over IP easily. They can create a voice over IP phone number or like a new email address. There have been even cases where the candidate or the fraudster use that person's phone number as well, the phone number that goes with the LinkedIn profile.
Wow.
And when he was about to get scheduled for a phone interview, he actually asked the interviewer to use a different phone number because he couldn't pick up the first phone number.
Yeah.
So in this case, they don't necessarily need a very like sophisticated AI tool. I mean, they could just use like ChatGPT. Then we go into the interview process. So during the interview, it could be that they can use different tools to, kind of real time get the answer. That's one thing. But then we also see cases where they use kind of a face filter or a voice
Hmm.
filter. So, like, you could have like someone overseas that tries to impersonate, someone else that like lives in the US. So we kind of have that face filter and voice filter. That's like something that is coming up that's, somewhat you can say that it's more advanced. To me, when you are impersonating a different identity or, completely fabricating an identity, that's the biggest form of fraud. Like you can't really argue if it's okay or not. I mean, there is also, there are cases where a candidate might use, ChatGPT to polish a resume or even, get assistance in like answering questions. You can, that's kind of a fuzzy area and you can argue that, okay, maybe that is okay. But if you are completely fabricating a personality or impersonating someone or flat lying about your past experiences, that's just not okay, and that's definitely fraud.
So your company can, correct me if I'm wrong. So your company can help pick up on the technology people are using to fool potential employers. And then you also do background checks to make sure that their um, work history is legitimate. Is that fair to say?
So what we do, we don't necessarily try to identify what technology they use. We look for our models, like we build models and we continuously train them to detect anomalies.
Okay.
So that's sort of in a nutshell, like it's kind of similar to how like us as humans we feel like, oh, something is off. But as an assistant to the hiring team, Attesto looks at hundreds of signals at a given point, which is hard for a human to kind of look at all of them and think about it all at once. So Attesto looks at all these signals and then tries to see, okay, well, are there a lot of like anomalies? So that we could say that something is off and this candidate is suspicious of fraud, or things are really matching up. So it's very likely that this candidate is clear. In addition to that, we have a growing database of confirmed fraud actors and confirmed clear candidates. And that's the database that's also helping us to both train our models, and then also when these actors like keep trying for other jobs in different companies, and we just know that for sure there are fraud actors. We do that in the top of the funnel, before they even start the interview process. We basically with Attesto looks at, the content of the resume is like something off. It looks at their LinkedIn profile. It does Google search on them. If, like for example, if they're a software developer, Attesto checks their GitHub profile. And then when Attesto asks pre-screening questions, like, okay, are there things that are off in the way they answer? So collectively looks at the phone number. Okay, is the phone number really matching with the name? Like the pattern in the email address, like all of that, a lot of signals. And then it would like say that, okay, it's very likely that this candidate is clear of fraud, or it seems pretty likely that this candidate is suspicious of fraud. And if it's confirmed by a human expert, we would say that, okay, this is a confirmed fraud. Then it gets to the interview process, and what we are about to launch is actually Attesto helping, like sort of similar to your note taker. Attesto is also joining the meeting with you, and then provides as an interviewer. Attesto provides like insights that, okay, something is off, and maybe like you could ask a question, right, to disambiguate, right? Like maybe if something with the face movement or the way they're talking is off, maybe you can actually ask them to because there are ways to like see if they're using face filter or they're using voice filter, right? So Attesto very much is looking at detecting these anomalies and providing that assistance to the human experts. At the end of it, the decision is with the hiring team. right? Like what they want to do with the information.
Do you think it's possible to design an interview that's impossible to cheat on, like from beginning to end, impossible to cheat on, or will AI always be one step ahead in some way?
Um, it's like a interesting question. Like I think there are a lot of thoughts right now around how to design interviews or how to design
Sure.
exams, right? So I think it's a this is a more philosophical question in a way that how are we assessing people's capabilities nowadays where pretty much everything can be answered, by chat GPT, right? So one thing that it would be great to assess is the human or the professional's judgment, because that's like, I mean, how do you assess that person's judgment, right? Because the judgment is one thing that if especially with people with experience and the white collar jobs, like with that judgment they can also train models. They can also figure out if AI is actually doing and saying a sensible thing or not. So it's more about, okay, how do you assess like students to make sure they have the right judgment, and why they're using these tools, they can be actually effective in their career, or also like for hiring, how these individuals can be effective and help building your company in this day and age that you actually encourage employees to use AI, right, to be more
Mm,
productive. So if you are able to do that, which is not easy, then it's probably harder, much harder to cheat. But that's like kind of, it comes back to what you are designing as your assessment process. And I think one thing that we should get used to is that trust and assessment is not a binary sort of a decision anymore. And it's not like the one at one point, you decide that this person is perfect and this person is trustworthy and it should be taken for granted. So we should kind of get more comfortable with the notion that our understanding of people, whether we trust them or whether they're qualified or not, is more of a continuous nature and a dynamic nature. And you have to keep collecting these like signals and adjust your kind of understanding of how trustworthy this person is.
sure,
I don't know if I
sure.
answered the question. I
No,
mean,
no, you did, you did, you did, you did. But as you said that, I was thinking in my head that I've seen videos on Instagram where someone impersonates a celebrity.
yeah.
Um, I've heard of people putting earpieces in their ear
Uh-huh.
uh,
Uh-huh.
to to get answers. And of course, we've already talked about how people may get hired for a job and somebody different steps in, or somebody gets hired for a job and then they just sort of offshore it to somebody else and they just take the credit for it. All these different ways of committing fraud or cheating the system. It makes me wonder, are there any legal consequences for this? I know ultimately somebody can get fired for the job, but can someone go to jail for doing any of these things that we've been talking about, as far as you know?
Yeah, I mean, I know of some cases
Okay.
where, the actor like impersonated someone or like fabricated and they got reported to FBI. A lot of times companies don't bother, like they don't want to like deal with the next steps and just like fire and kind of cut access.
Yeah.
But there is a big cost associated with that. Like just imagine like you hire someone, if that individual has like access to your confidential information, right? Who knows what their incentive was for cheating, whether they wanted to actually access your data or whether they wanted to just make money for a few months. So there's actually a big like security risk here. But in addition to that, it's the time that you spend onboarding them and training them. Then there is the team morale, right? Like once, like after weeks or months, you fire someone and you kind of tell people that, oh, your teammate was actually a fraudster. that also, it impacts the team morale because like, they're like, oh my God, like our teammate was, it's kind of like, feeling violated in a way for the team and the
Sure.
company. So, but a lot of times companies just like cut access and just like let go. But I know of cases that, yeah, they got reported to FBI. A lot of times when it's discovered during the interview process and, like let's say the interviewer like asks like a follow-up question and the fraudster like realizes that, oh, wow, like he's kind of getting discovered, he just drops, right? Like let's say like it's a Zoom call and you kind of like a recruiter, one of our customers was like telling me the other day that she asked the candidate to show a kind of a plug, like a power outlet, to make sure that actually he lives in the US. And like, right, it was just like a way for her to like identify it. And I found like, okay, brilliant. And then like, the candidate just dropped the call, just left, right?
Very
Because they don't want to
clever.
be like, yeah, but like a lot of times, like a lot of times they just like leave the interview and they disappear, whether they're an employee or a candidate. So, and it's just hard and companies don't bother to even like report them.
Yeah, I think some companies are more are targeted more than others. I've read recently where I think it was North Korea was
Sony,
getting their software,
yeah.
getting people hired um, here in the States and just sending the paychecks back to North Korea to fund their missile program. Have you heard that?
Yes, yes, there was that. They wanted to kind of retaliate against Sony, so they did that with Sony. So that was actually backed by the North Korean government,
Okay.
actually. So there are different incentives to your point. Like there are actually cases where, they want to plan sort of like a cyber security attack or access information. But oftentimes, those are the ones that make the news a lot of times. But the majority of cases that we see, they simply want to either get a better job,
Hmm.
or if they're impersonating, they live somewhere else and they want to get a higher salary that is
Sure.
associated, with a US job. And they feel like, okay, at some point they get discovered because, the social security number doesn't match whatsoever, but it takes months for that. So they have like a few months of salary and they will have a laptop or anything else that is sent to them when they get hired. And then there are also like cases that they collaborate with individuals in the US.
Do you think there are any silver linings here? Is any of this pressure um, around candidates committing fraud with AI? Is that going to push companies towards better, more human hiring practices, you think?
Um, that that's definitely the case. I think the other thing is, which is long overdue, as I mentioned, is kind of a gradual trust building. Like when you're hiring someone uh, off the bat, like that individual gradually should also earn the trust and like prove herself or himself. So I think that should be a shift in the companies, and it's not just for the fraud cases that we see. I think overall that's a better practice for the company. I'm not saying that you've got to be suspicious of everyone. Like I'm not like promoting that culture, but I think just like an understanding of being more careful about, how much responsibility and how much access you give to someone that you just hire, and making sure that just the systems are more kind of secure and robust. I think overall, this shouldn't be the reason for companies to be like afraid. Like with the right tools and the right practices, they can secure themselves. And the risk with that, the risk is going to be pretty low, and the benefit of still like tapping into the larger network of talent, whether you are like remotely hiring remotely or just outside of your referral network, the benefit is still so high that I think it's worth to take the small risk. But, at the same time, I think they need to educate the hiring team and then also have kind of the right stack and right tools to protect them.
Okay. Okay. Fascinating conversation. If somebody wanted to connect with you, get more information about your company and what you do and how you can protect them against fraudsters, how can they find you online?
So our website, attesto.com. That's a good place to start with. And they're welcome to email me directly as well, Maryam@attesto.com.
Very good.
Find me on LinkedIn.
You know what? I'll put a link there on the screen for people who want to connect with you via LinkedIn. I'll put that on the screen. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you being on the Jim Stroud Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Well, my time is up. I thank you for yours. I'll see you again real soon right here with a brand new episode of the Jim Stroud Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached by email at jimstroud@jimstroud.com. And one last favor, if I may ask, please rate this podcast. 5 stars is preferred, but please comment with your honest opinion. I really appreciate that. All right? Okay, until next time, bye-bye.